So from yesterday, we talked about congruent figures. We said that congruent figures are when one is a carbon copy of the other, right? It's like a cookie cutter. If you have congruent figures, if I know triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, then I know angle A is congruent to angle D, angle B is congruent to angle E, angle C is congruent to angle F, and then the sides that correspond are congruent, right? We learned this yesterday. Yes? If I don't know that the triangles are congruent yet, I'll put a giant question mark here. I don't know that they're congruent. I know they look alike, but I don't know for sure. If I wanted to show that they're congruent, I would have to list all the angle pairs that are congruent, and then I would have to list all the side pairs that are congruent. I'd have to check every single one of them. And then once I could check, yes, these angles all are congruent. Yes, these sides are congruent. Then I could come over here and say, where I didn't know before that they were congruent, I could come over here and say, yep, I definitely know they're congruent now because I just checked all 6 items. Does that make sense? So there's a lot to go into checking. Now yesterday we didn't check. Yesterday we started with them being congruent and we just found the missing value. Or we just recognized like side BC would be congruent to side what over here? EF. So that's what we did yesterday. Now what we're getting into is if I throw 2 triangles at you, we're going to stick to just triangles. So no quadrilaterals, no pentagons, hexagons, octagons, just triangles. If I throw 2 triangles at you, can you tell me if they're congruent to each other? You would have to go through this whole list to do that. Today's lesson is about a shortcut. There's a shortcut when you're dealing with triangles. Because a triangle has 3 sides, right? And because it only has 3 angles, what happens is if I have enough of these pieces of information, certain pieces, then I don't have to find all 6 of them. I can go ahead and say the triangles are congruent because the way a triangle is built, the stuff I've not checked off yet would by default have to be congruent, otherwise it wouldn't be a triangle. So, for instance, if I can show all 3 sides, pairs are congruent, if I can show that I got a pair of congruent sides here, a pair here, and the 3rd side here, I don't have to check the angles because if the sides are congruent, then when the triangle is drawn with those congruent sides, the angles would by default have to be congruent. Does that make sense? So it's like a shortcut because of the way a triangle is drawn. You don't have to go through all 6 things. You can just find 3, but it's 3 strategic things. Look at the acronym at the top of that paper. What do you think SSS stands for? Side, side, side. One of the first shortcuts, strategic shortcuts, to proving 2 triangles are congruent is just checking the sides. You don't even have to look at the angles. Because if the sides check off, then the angles fall into place. And you can say, yep, they're congruent. What do you think SAS stands for? Side, angle, side. This is where we're checking 2 sides and then a strategic angle. It's not just any angle. It's going to be an angle that is in between the 2 congruent sides. And if we can verify that in both triangles, we don't have to check all 6 things. We can go ahead and say they're congruent. Okay? So this is kind of like a roadmap of where we're going. We're going to learn in total 5 shortcuts. You got SSS, SAS, AS, ASA, and then a random HL. What do you think HL stands for in triangles? Not quite, but I'm glad you're guessing. Hypotenuse leg. HL stands for hypotenuse leg. But that'll be the last one we learn. Okay, so if you would direct your attention right here, this is page 41. SSS and SAS. So at the way the paper is designed, the top of the paper is going to show you the two shortcuts and then spell it out for you, and then we start practicing, okay? So let's look at the top of the paper. It's side, side, side is the SSS postulate. The word postulate means kind of like the word theorem. Theorem means a statement that can be proven easily. Postulate is something that can be proven and that we're going to use along the way as shortcuts when we do hit proofs. Don't get caught up on the word postulate. Focus on SSS, side, side, side. That's what you need to know, okay? All right, if the three sides of one triangle are congruent to the three sides of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. The shortcut is SSS. You need three sides of one triangle congruent to three sides of the other. So right here, just like what we did yesterday, I want you to fill in these congruent parts. So I'm going to start with the first tick mark. If AB is congruent to what? Over here. YX. Now I'm going to name it XY because I called it AB, but YX is also correct. If AB is congruent to XY, then what's another side that's congruent? Let's just go around the horn. What's this one? BC. Congruent to what? YZ. And then last, you call it AC, then the other one needs to be called, which one? XC. If you have all three sides congruent to all three sides, then you've met the shortcut for side, side, side. Then we don't even need to know the angles. The two triangles would have to be carbon copies of each other. So we can come down here and we can say the triangles are congruent. Triangle, now remember order matters. If you name this A, B, C, watch the path of the tick marks that I just went. I went 1 and then 2. What would I have to name this one then? You'd have to name this one X, Y, Z. So watch how you name it. It does matter. So that's the side, side, side shortcut. Now we're going to look at the side, angle, side shortcut. If two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. They meet the side angle side shortcut. this is where, so I would say of the 5 things we're going to learn, SSS is the easiest because you're just looking at all the sides. When you start mixing sides and angles is where some people struggle. And it's because the order matters. It does not mean just 2 sides and a random angle. It means 2 sides and then the angle in between them. That's what it means. That's why it's in the order SAS. So to help people learn when they are looking at an SAS situation, I would suggest you draw an exaggerated arc on the angle that's congruent. You see this picture here? You can see there's an angle congruent. Angle B is congruent to angle Y. Okay, but it's kind of hard to tell like what I'm looking at. So I want you to exaggerate the arc. I want it to go past the triangle's edges. Here's why I want you to do that. The 2 sides that the angle touches, that the arc is touching, those are the 2 sides that have to be congruent. Otherwise, this does not meet an SAS shortcut. So if you draw your exaggerated arc, extending past the edges, now it's going to help your mind focus on, okay, I've got to have this edge. It also helps with your highlighter. This is why I made you get a highlighter. Highlight the sides that are congruent. This side is congruent here, and then this side is congruent here. Did my exaggerated arc touch my 2 congruent sides? Yes. So then that means I'm looking at, watch how I do this. This is a side that's congruent as I'm going around the triangle. This is an angle that's congruent, and this is a side that's congruent. This is a side, this is an angle, this is a side. So this is a side angle side shortcut. Now let's list it out in that order. Let's list a side, an angle, and then another side. So we've got side AB is congruent to side XY. What angle's congruent? B and Y. And then side BC is congruent to side YZ. So therefore, the 2 triangles must be congruent. If I call it triangle ABC, I would have to call the other one XYZ. Okay, there's our 2 concepts. Now let's start putting it into practice. And I can't keep that showing up there while I'm scrolling down. So you'll have to look at yours on your paper. I'm not sure what happened here. All right, it said, would you, numbers 1 through 4, it says, would you use SSS or SAS to prove the triangles are congruent? If there's not enough information, you would just write not enough information. So we're looking at the triangles, trying to decide do the pictures, based on what they give me, match the SSS shortcut or the SAS shortcut. Okay? Before we dive into this, I need to show you something that's 2 types of pictures. You have 2 types of pictures. The first picture, I'm going to change colors with my notes. The first type of picture is when they are disconnected. I'm going to write disconnected triangles. Or disjoint is another word for it. Right? got disconnected or you've got disjoint. Please sit up. Please sit up. Disconnected or disjoint. Disjoint is a fancy word for disconnected. So when the triangles are disconnected like this, you just run with exactly what you see. Okay? There's no secret hidden information when they're disconnected. These are the easier types of problems. When the triangles are touching, come right here, make a note. These are connected triangles. This is a different type of scenario. When they're touching, there's generally something secret that's not marked that you have to mark before you can answer the question. Okay? So, recap. Disjoint triangles means I just run with the information marked. There's nothing secret. Whoop. Connected triangles, they're touching somehow. Then there's probably some secret info here that's not marked that I have to mark before I can answer the question. Okay? Look at all four of these triangles. What do you notice? They're all connected. So we're going to get good practice with that secret info. Okay? Let's look at how they're connected. If you look at these two triangles, what's something we just learned last week, week before, we've been practicing with, that we describe like how they are connected? What does it look like one triangle did to create the other triangle? What? Reflected. It looks like one got reflected to create the other one. They're back to back. Do you notice this side right here? Draw it really thick on your paper. You could even draw it with that highlighter too if you wanted to. I want you to imagine these two triangles. You really got to get like dig deep down in your, Disney imagination. I want you to imagine these two triangles being pulled apart. So now they're disconnected. What would happen to that side that I just made darker? If I pull these two triangles apart, what would happen to it? Let me call it A, B. This is going to help. If I draw the two triangles pulled apart, can you tell me what this would be? What letter? Okay. What about that one? It's all right. Y'all tell me. What do you think? A? Do you still think B? Do you think? I want you to argue with me. Do you think A or B? Okay. You're back. All right. You switching to A? Can you tell me why? Okay. So she switched to A. What would this one? That doesn't even look like an A. Let's fix that. All right. What's this one going to be? B. What about this one? What happened? So when I pulled them apart, I ended up having to write the letters twice. Okay, this is called a shared side. This side is part of the triangle on the left. It's part of the triangle on the right. If I try to draw them separated, then I end up with a side duplicated. So that this triangle has side AB, but what about this triangle? Also has side AB. Is it fair to say that side AB must be congruent to side AB? Does it sound redundant to say that? But when you look at the picture, how many side ABs do we have? Okay, so then we have to remember, where are we? We're in a, what did we say yesterday? If we're doing proofs, we are in a, do you remember? I said proofs are like being a lawyer, so we're in a courtroom. So we have to be specific. We have to be nitpicky. So how many side ABs do I have? I have 2, so I need to address that. It's safe to say that this is congruent to this because it's the same side that got drawn twice if we separate the triangles. I want you to come over here to your picture. Now, this is the first time you've ever seen this, so it probably feels weird. But it's gonna come up more often, and then you're gonna start getting really good at it, recognizing it. These triangles are connected by what's called a shared side. I want you to write that. We are going to start practicing writing shared side whenever we see one. I would love for you to jump to the next question where you see a shared side. Put your pencil on the next picture that has a shared side. I'm walking around to check. You don't have to mark it yet. I just want to see who's got their pencil where. You're putting your pencil where the next picture entails a shared side. Everybody got a pencil somewhere? That's 100%. Good job, y'all. So the very next picture has a shared side. Let's just go ahead and write an arrow, drawing to it, and say shared side. What do you know about a shared side if you take the triangles and pull them apart? Addie, they're what? They're going to be equal because it's going to get duplicated, right? So how many congruent marks are right here, Daryl? How many marks? The one. And why is there 2 marks here? What does the 2 mean? The fact that they did 2 marks instead of 1. Yes. And then how many marks do you think I need to put right here? Because we don't know the length of it, but we do know that it's congruent to itself. It feels weird to have only one side marked with 3. There's no other marking with 3. But you got to imagine pulling these apart, and then what would happen? Peyton, what would happen? If I pulled these apart, what would happen with my side that's marked with 3? It gets separated, and I'd have to draw it twice, right? Okay. Let's come back to this. We haven't answered the question yet because this was the first time that we've had a problem with sneaky info. This is the sneaky info, is that you would have to make this mark here. Now, coming back to the picture, my menu had this covered up. I just noticed I have 1 tick mark here. What's this tick mark? Do I need to adjust my picture? What do I need to do? I need to put a second tick mark here so I don't try to say that AB is congruent to those bottom triangles, right? Okay, now we're going to answer the question. It says, is there enough info to say that the triangles are congruent? What's the first shortcut, Leah, that we've learned? Name the first shortcut we're using. You got side, side, side. Okay. Landon, can you tell me the second shortcut we're looking for? Side, angle, side. So it's almost a multiple choice question, y'all. So when you first look at it, you see an open-ended question. It's not open-ended. It's actually multiple choice. If you keep in the back of your mind, I'm working on side, 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 or side, angle, side. So that should bring some comfort to you as you do these practice problems where you think this is like some open-ended assignment. It's actually multiple choice, right? So look for that. Look for ways to know when it's actually a multiple choice question. Let's think smarter, not harder. Okay, so let's answer it. Looking at my picture, you're going to go off of your markings, okay? We don't know a single number here in terms of the length of the sides. We do know an angle measure. Houston, what angle do I know? I know a 90 because of what symbol, Mila? The box tells me 90. So I do have a number there hidden. But we're going to go by the markings. I want you to scroll your paper. You don't have to scroll yours. I'll scroll mine. I want you to look at the top of your paper. Look at the marking examples. Look at the picture we're working on. Can you tell me What type of info is marked? Now, it's multiple choice. You got sides or angles. How many sides are marked? 2. Any angles? 1. So what are we probably working towards? Very good. We're working towards side angle side. Now it's a matter of you go around the triangle and you just check off, did it meet the requirements? Go back and do what I told you to do with your highlighter. I want you to take your highlighter. It's a scientific fact that if you will highlight your notes in strategic places, it will actually help with that comprehension of the material, okay? It's a known fact. Now, you can't highlight all of your notes because then that would just be over. Can't highlight the whole paper. That defeats the purpose. You highlight strategic things so it draws your attention to it. We're going to highlight the sides that are congruent. And then we're going to go to the angle and we're going to exaggerate the congruence marking. Now, do I have a congruent angle marking in this picture? I don't this time, right? But what do I know? Mila's already said it once. Caleb, can you say it? What do I know about the angles? How do you know? What does the box mean? That little box, what does it mean?
Oh,
that it's 90. And so what's this one? Also 90. So something you're going to learn when we get back to those 2-column proofs, all right angles are equal. Well, that makes sense because all right angles measure what? 90. Well, that would, duh, right? But remember I said that proofs are nitpicky, so you have to be nitpicky about it. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mark, whoops. I'm going to exaggerate that 90 and I'm going to exaggerate that 90. Does it touch my 2 highlighted congruent sides? Yes. Then it meets the requirement for side angle side. So all we need to do is say, you can either write the word yes or you could just say that this is a side angle side problem. By the way, thank you all. Good job.
Before you got here, there was a thing that said check your email. Did you didn't check your email for something? I don't know what it was about, but it was probably about it.
Oh, 7 alarm for 9:25 a.m. The Peter Pan performance is going on, so they turned off 2 bells. That's what it was. Thank you. We're good. All right, number 2. Here's why you may probably realize that why side is everybody's favorite. Look at the markings on the picture. Let that guide you to the shortcut you're trying to check off. Do you have a single angle marking? No, not at all. So this is not a side angle side shortcut because we know nothing about the angles, right? What shortcut are we going to work towards? Side, and it is as simple as checking the pairs of sides. Like I've checked off this is congruent here. I checked this is congruent, and then we already discussed this is a shared side, so it's congruent to itself, because if I pull it apart, I'm going to have to draw it twice. So this is yes or no. Does it meet the shortcut? Yes. This is a side problem. All right, number 3. Looking at number 3, are they touching? Then there's sneaky info that we need to mark. What is the info that, or what's the scenario? Let me ask that. What's the scenario here? There's a what? Shared side. Let's draw an arrow to it. Let's write the words shared side. I know you may be like, I really don't want to write that again. I've already written it twice. But I promise you it's going to solidify this thought process. It's going to help along the way. I promise. if this is a shared side, or shared sides, I don't know why I wrote an S, this means that if I take the triangles and I pull them apart, that side would be drawn twice, which means it's congruent to itself. So I'm going to come over here and draw two congruent marks. Now, all I have to go on is what's in the picture. What shortcut do you think we're working towards? Which one? We're working towards side, side, side. Do we have a single angle marking at all? None. Like not even a 90 and a 90. There's nothing. We know nothing about these angles. Can we verify the side, side, side shortcut has been checked off? If you look around the triangles, have you verified that you have 3 pairs of congruent sides by the markings? No. And I'm glad you're confident. Why not? What's missing? The lines at the top of the triangles are not here. Now, yes, it does look congruent. You can't go by looks. Remember we talked about in a courtroom, you can't say, well, he looks like the criminal. Well, yeah, he's 6'2", white male with brown hair. Like, how many 6'2" white males with brown hair are there? A lot. You can't say looks like it. You've got to be specific, right? This looks congruent, but it's not marked. So we say it's not congruent that we know of. So this, I'm going to put a question mark here and a question mark here. I would love for you to do that because you're saying, I don't know this. I don't know what the length of this is. Therefore, there is not enough info. We cannot verify that these are congruent because they didn't give us any info on that last pair of sides. All right, go to number 4. Are they touching? Yes, this is a new sneaky info. Is it a shared side? No. When you look at it, you should see there's no shared side here, but they're definitely touching. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was a month ago. There's a vocab word that we learned a month ago that is right there in the middle of that picture. What? Yes. Do you remember we talked about anytime 2 lines cross, you have 2 pairs of vertical angles? Anytime you have an X formed by lines, you have vertical angles, and they're always opposite of each other. They're like a double-sided flashlight. So these are vertical angles, which means this has to be congruent to this. That is sneaky info that's not marked, and if you don't mark it to start with, you'll be stuck in answering the question. Did I spell vertical right? Yeah. I'm looking at it too long. Now it's starting to look like I spelled it wrong. So we have a pair of vertical angles. Now, I have good news. You ready for this? No, I don't have good news. I was going to say those are all the sneaky scenarios. There's one more sneaky scenario, but I don't think it comes up until we get to similar figures. Yeah, it doesn't. We're not doing it. All right, I'll save that for later. These are the 2 most common sneaky scenarios. There you go. A shared side or a pair of vertical angles. Okay, those are the most common ones. Those are the ones you usually have the most often. All right, now that we have our angles marked as vertical and they're congruent to each other, we do now have a pair of congruent angles, which means what shortcut are we leaning towards? Side, angle, side. So we're going to look at the picture and verify, does it mean side, angle, side? The way you do this, 2 ways to do it. One is take your highlighter and highlight the congruent sides, and then verify that the congruent angle is touching the highlighted sides. You could do that. Take your highlighter, highlight the congruent sides, Then verify that the angle is definitely touching those congruent sides. Did it meet the requirement? Yep. So this is a side angle side problem. A second way to verify, if you're not a big fan of the highlighter technique, you start in a blank area of the triangle. So like you start like right here. And then you work your way around the triangle and you just write the letter S or A based on what is congruent. So as I work my way around, this is a pair of congruent what? This is a pair of congruent sides, and then this means congruent angle, and as I keep going, this is a congruent side. Then you would go to the other triangle and just make sure it's in that same order, side angle side. So that's another technique. Most people are either one or the other. They usually don't try both or they don't see both. Lots of people like the highlighter thing. Some people can see the side angle side thing. Doesn't matter which one you pick as long as you are getting it right. All right, go to the back. We have 4 more practice problems, and then we're going to kind of jump around here for a second. Go to the back, 5 through 8. I would love for you to try these on your own for a second. Try them on your own. Number 5 is kind of a weird one. They are touching, however, they're not touching in a way that's a shared side. They're not touching in a way that's vertical angles because I don't have that clear cut like X of 2 straight lines. So this is like double sneaky because you think it's a sneaky problem with secret info, but there's actually no secret info at all. So you might want to make a note that yes, maybe not that note. Let's try something else. Let's write doesn't matter. Like this, the fact that they're touching here does not matter because it's not a shared side. It's not a vertical angle situation. There is another type of sneaky info we've not had yet. It's coming up in numbers. Well, maybe not. So in this particular case, it just doesn't matter that they're touching. So you could think of them as totally separate triangles. The separate triangles are the easiest ones because you just run with the marks that are there. You know nothing's secret about it. Do I have enough marks here to meet a shortcut for number 5? We're shooting for side, 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 or side angle side. Michaela? Yes or no? No. There's not enough marks. You don't have a single angle mark, so you can't go side angle side. And for side, 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 I would need to know the bottom info, and you could put question marks here. We don't know anything about the bottom, so there's not enough info here. Okay, coming to number 6. Is it sneaky? We got sneaky info here. Yes? What do we have? There's a side shared between them. There is a shared side. I want you to mark it. And then I want you to go put a congruent mark on it by itself. How many tick marks should I do? 2. So we've marked our congruent side. Because if we pull those triangles apart, that side would get repeated, which clearly means it would be equal to itself. Now, do we have enough info to verify side, 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 or side angle side? Which one? If you look at it, first of all, you definitely can mark out side, 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 because we don't know anything about these sides here. I'm going to use the highlighter technique. There's a side congruent to this, and then of course this side is congruent to itself. Then I'm going to go in and draw the congruent congruent mark thicker so I can see, does it touch the two highlighted sides? Yes, it does. So yes, this is a side angle side problem. Which means that if I wanted to say the two triangles are congruent to each other, I can by the side angle side shortcut. All right, come down here to this one. Is it sneaky? Hannah, sneaky or not? It is sneaky. Savannah, what did you mark? Yep, there's a shared side right here. How many tick marks should I put on it, Audrina? If I do 2, I'm glad you said 2. If I do 2, did I just imply it's congruent to this down here? There it is. Good. Please, if I call on you and you answer me wrong, please don't feel embarrassed. Please don't hate me, first of all. Please know that along the process of learning, you're going to get stuff wrong, okay? You are literally in a room where I want you to get things wrong so I can say, hey, by the way, that's wrong. Let's fix it. Here's the right answer. Here's the right technique, right? I don't want you to feel like you have to be perfect in here because that does not exist. It's not feasible. You're learning math, you're learning challenging math, you're learning math you're probably never going to use again for the rest of your life. But what you are going to use again for the rest of your life is the ability to be wrong at something and then power through it and get right at it, right? You're learning that important strategy technique. Do we have enough info here to verify that they're congruent? What would our shortcut be? We definitely have all 3 sides here, all 3 sides there, which is exactly why side, side, side is everyone's favorite, because it's just so easy to check off. Number 8, is it sneaky? Yes, it is sneaky. What is not marked that needs to be marked? Vertical angles. And I want you to draw the arrow and write vertical angles, because I promise when I turn you loose with these practice problems, if you'll write that and then mark them congruent, this is going to get easier along the way. Now I'm going to go in and ask myself, am I checking for side, side, side or side, angle, side? We're going to check off for side angle side because we don't know enough about the third side. We don't have any marks. So I'm going to highlight the sides that are congruent. And then I'm going to just kind of emphasize the angles that are congruent. All right, here's what I want to do to answer this question, but I want everyone comfortable answering. And we're going to play, it's almost like heads up 7. I want you to put your head down. Ready? Head down. Now, if you need to look at the picture again, here's going to be the question. Don't answer out loud. Yes or no for side angle side. You're going to do thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Thumbs up, yes, we can verify side angle side, or thumbs down, we cannot. I want to see everyone's hands to know. Okay, now relax your thumb and sit up. We had a couple right, we had a couple wrong, mostly right. When you drew your highlighted sides that are congruent, do you notice that right here, that is touching a side I did not highlight? And do you notice right here, that's touching a side I did not highlight? So now that I've pointed that out to you as a whole class, can I use side angle side here? No. There's not enough info here. I definitely do have 2 pairs of congruent sides. I definitely have 1 pair of congruent angles. But the location of them does not meet the side angle side requirement. So there's not enough info. This lesson takes longer because this is the first time that you're seeing stuff like this and trying this. As we learn the next lessons, it'll go much faster because you're gonna be like, I already know what I'm doing. Like, you know what I mean? This is the first time we're doing it. All right, let's come down here. The last 4 questions are saying, what additional info, meaning what is it that you need to know that's not marked in order to use the side, side, side shortcut? So now the triangles are labeled with letters. Now we have specifics. If I was trying to go for side, 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 I want you to put a question mark on your paper, on the picture, on the side that we're missing. Put a question mark on the sides we're missing. What sides do we not have marked that we need? And then now it's going to say they want you to come right here and actually state it. Did everyone put their question marks here and here? Now they want you to name them. We would need to know, in order for these triangles to be congruent by side, 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 we would need to know that MN now use the congruent statement over here. MN would have to be congruent to JK. You're saying, hey, there's something not marked that I need marked if you want me to use side, side, side. All right, everybody go to number 10. Try it. Now be careful. They're definitely touching, right? So is there something not marked that we actually can mark? What could I mark? Because they're touching. The shared side. I've got a shared side. So I could mark this. Now put your question mark on what you need. We're shooting for side, side, side. So we would need what? BC to be congruent. Read your statement. BC would need to be congruent to DA. And we don't have that. Last 2 questions are the same thing, but this time they're saying to shoot for the side angle side shortcut. This is really when that highlight technique helps. Go highlight the sides that are congruent, and then remember it needs to be the angle in between them, touching them. So everyone try number 11. They are disjoint, so you don't have any sneaky info. So if I highlight my sides that are congruent, then I can see exactly where my angles should be marked. And I'm going to draw a dotted line instead of a solid arc. I'm going to draw a dotted one. This is where my angle should be, right? Because it's touching the 2 highlighted sides. I don't know it though. And then where should it be over here? What angle? B. This is where it should be. I don't know it. So if you want me to say the triangles are congruent by the side angle side shortcut, I would need angle S to be congruent to angle B. All right, let's try 12. They're touching. Is there any sneaky info? There's a pair of vertical angles that you need to mark before you try to answer the question. Now draw your highlighter on the congruent sides, and in this case, we're shooting for side angle side. Now we can clearly see what's missing. Do what? I'm missing a pair of congruent sides, right? Now, location matters. If I come out here and say it's this side, I want you to visualize if I had highlighted this side, is that the correct side I'm missing? No. This is why drawing the mark like on the angle and exaggerating it is really helpful, because then you can see like, okay, it checks off here, this one's good, but this one's clearly missing. Then you can see this one checks off, that's good, but that one's missing. So we've got that EF would need to be congruent to HF. All right, we'll say it again, because this was a lengthy lesson, but there was a lot of brand new info here. Future lessons on this stuff, like tomorrow and Wednesday, should not take nearly as long, because it's the info you've already seen. It's just now it's a different picture, okay?